Hey, church, I'm with Lucas Miles with Turning Point USA Faith, and he's here today. Thank you so much just for spending some of your time. I know you have a big conference coming up, I think next week, and so we're able to grab you for a few minutes to really talk about what you have been doing. You've obviously you're the author of Woke Jesus, and so you've been busy with the ramifications of that. But also, you are interacting with people of faith when it comes to the issues of public policy and even politics. And this week, we're talking about worldview when it collides with personality, when it collides with public policy. Really, the bottom line is how or should Christians get involved with politics or public policy? And so I'll tee it up with that. Uh,
Yeah.
how should Christians interact in a season like this?
Well, first off, Pastor, it's an honor to be with you guys and just to speak to your church in this way. And this is such an important conversation. Actually, just this past Sunday, I taught at my church a message on this very question of, should and how do Christians get involved with politics? We hear this all the time of things like, well, there's not a good Christian on the ballot, so I'm just not going to vote this year. I'm going to abstain from voting. Or you'll hear people, say things like, well, Jesus is coming back soon, so we really don't need to be involved in kind of earthly affairs in this way.
Right.
But for some reason, these people still have lunch, they still brush their teeth, they still put their clothes on, they still do a bunch of other daily things, as they're waiting for Jesus to come back. So there are two passages I would probably direct people's attention to maybe process through this. So first off, what we see is that in the parable of the talents, you see these different talents that are given to these different individuals by the master, and then the master leaves and then tells them, I'm eventually going to come back and I expect a return from what's given. He praises the one that takes the 5 talents and multiplies it, the one that takes the 3 talents and multiplies it, and then you have the one that's given the 1 talent and he just buries it. He kind of just sits on it, doesn't do anything with it, because he basically says, look, I know that my master is kind of this shrewd guy. I don't want to jeopardize this at all, so I'm just going to hang on to this and give it back to him when he comes back, so he sees how good of a job I did. And besides, he's coming back soon, so I don't really have to think about it a whole lot. Like, it's just going to be here when he gets back. And I think that what we have right now, and I don't want to provide, some sort of eisegesis to this passage to make it sound like that passage is only talking about voting or that it's specifically talking about voting. It's not. It's talking about stewardship in general. And we have a million areas in our life that we are called to be good stewards with our time, with our money, with our resources, with our attention, with our, we could look at things like our prayer life. We could look at things like, even health and well-being, like exercise and physical fitness. All of those are an aspect of stewardship. From Genesis chapter 1, we are called to have dominion, to rule and reign on planet Earth, to occupy until he comes, to be a good steward with this world. Politics is the way in which we steward society. It's not how we steward the environment. It's not how we steward our families. It's not even how we steward the church. It's how we steward kind of civilization as a whole within these geographical regions that have been divided, by people. And so we have an obligation, I believe, as good stewards, to utilize this talent that the Lord's given us, our voice, our influence, our Christian witness, and our vote, in order to be able to influence the world around us and steward it well. I believe that when somebody either does not vote, it is the equivalent of burying that talent in the sand, or if they use their vote and they throw it away, like, I'm going to write Jesus in the ballot just to spite the government sort of thing. Like, I appreciate the sentiment there, but you're actually wasting your vote. It's the same as throwing it away. It's the same as burying it in the sand. And the one who buries the talent versus the ones that tried to invest it in positive ways, he is basically told that, the servants are told to toss him out, of the gates. And whereas the ones that chose to invest it, that they are really, rewarded in that way. So I really do believe that God has called us to do that. And if I can kind of keep going into one more passage here, then I'll toss back to you, is we see in Jeremiah when the Jewish people were in exile in Babylon, where there were prophets that rose up that basically said to the people, hey guys, you don't need to do anything. God's going to deliver us soon. Don't even grow your gardens. Don't get married. Don't do anything like that. Don't even worry about, making your bed today. Like, God's coming to save us. We're going to be back home in no time. And I think that, we kind of have that happening today in Christian circles, where it's sort of like, well, Jesus is going to return, so what does this political thing even matter? That's the kingdom of man. It's not the kingdom of God. I don't have to think about that at all. He's coming back for me. And look, I tell people, I don't care if Jesus is coming back on November 6th. I still believe that we should be voting on November 5th and being a good steward all the way up until the time of his return. When you look at that passage in Jeremiah, Jeremiah finally receives a word from the Lord. And what is that word? It's to get married, to plant your gardens, to marry off your kids, to basically establish roots of your house for the purpose of occupying in this land until the Lord delivers you. There was a call towards stewardship and obedience until the moment of delivery, which for them didn't happen for, really, quite a while later. And so I think that the same applies for us today. We cannot over spiritualize these things, waste the vote, waste the stewardship opportunity that we have. I believe we're called to do something today.
Yeah. Oh, well said. Well said. Let's take this a little bit further here. I remember even 20 years ago, people beginning to plant seeds in a lot of Christian, even in my case, I was in seminary, so future pastors' minds, that you can't legislate morality. And so what was happening is that many pastors, even myself, kind of just weighing that out, kind of put us on the sidelines a little bit. And what ended up happening from what I saw, I don't know if you've seen this, a lot of subjects, whether it be abortion or whether it be religious liberty, just you name it, gender. It seems like we've been put on the sidelines, and the people that have been really pushing this policy are people that are of no faith at all. And so what I see here is the ramifications of us not engaging in this is that we've ceded really important subjects over to people that don't have faith. So if you could speak to that phrase that we hear, you can't legislate morality, give a rebuttal to that.
So first of all, you can legislate morality, and in fact, you should. And in fact, there's really no way around it. And I would say that this applies both in the civics arena, with state, local, and federal governments, as well as in the schoolhouse. Our people say, I heard Charlie Kirk, my boss here, recently said this, that, people say, I just want, reading, writing, and arithmetic in the schools. Well, that's not all you're ever going to have. There's always going to be a moral aspect. What happens if somebody's late to class? Well, now all of a sudden you have a standard and you have to address that standard. You've just moved into the realm of morality, having to correct that. What happens if somebody, is bullying somebody else? What happens if all these things? So you get outside of these concepts. It sounds really good on paper that, we don't legislate morality. We just, present these kind of standard laws. They don't have anything to do with the moral structure, but that doesn't exist in a real world. That may be in some sort of, far off utopian, concept. We could talk about that, but in the real world, everything always comes back to some form of morality. Now, what you can't legislate is you can't legislate the condition of the heart. I can put, we can put standards around people in order to box them in and ensure that wickedness doesn't reign, that, that there are laws against, murder and assault, and there's laws against stealing. There's laws against, cheating and different things like that. We can have laws around these things that help sort of basically put some safeguards around civilization to prevent it from falling into chaos and prevent it from harming other people. But what you can't do is you can't legislate the condition of somebody's heart. Somebody can follow the laws that are on the books. They can live a quote unquote moral life and still be far from God, still not have a revelation of Jesus, still not have, any sort of relationship with him on any spiritual plane. You're just preventing them from falling into some sort of overt wickedness that starts affecting everybody else around them. But a speed limit is a legislation of morality. Laws against murder, laws against illegal immigration. These are all forms of legislating morality, and we actually need those things. That's what makes a civilization actually work. The moment you stop legislating morality, we have anarchy, we have chaos. It becomes a dystopian society where if you don't like somebody, you can just kill them. If you don't if that you don't have something that somebody else has and you're envious of them, you just go and take it. That there's no rules or regulations around that. Everybody just does what's in their heart. And unfortunately, that's what we've been moving more and more to, because we've not been actually enforcing the laws that we have on the books. We are, basically, people are coming into the nation illegally, and we're just letting them go after maybe they're questioned for a little bit back into the country. There's no repercussions. There's no punishment. There's no sitting them back. And so therefore, what is reinforced is you can do whatever you want. We see the same thing happening happening with stealing. How many videos do we have to see of people going into, stores in San Francisco and malls and just taking whatever they want? The security guards just watching them go by, right? This is all a result of actually failing to enforce the laws that are on the books, in order to keep civilization in check and people in check. Because if everybody was actually governed by the Spirit of God, we probably wouldn't need any sort of laws, right? It would just be, and that's what heaven is, right? Jesus rules and reigns. Everybody's heart is fully, in tune with Him and connected to Him, and we don't have to have a bunch of petty laws on the books, because it is our relationship with Christ. It is the love of God really that governs our hearts, and as Paul says, restrains us. But we live in a time where not everybody hears from the Lord. Not everybody knows the Lord. Not everybody who knows the Lord is always able to do things perfectly. And so as fallen people, we require systems of checks and balances and systems of accountability and punishments and deterrence in order to help prevent society from falling into chaos. So this is just, we have to just debunk this idea about, that legislating morality is a bad thing. It happens in every nation in the world. It doesn't mean we have to create a Christian theocracy, that we have to do thou shalt read your Bible every single day. If you don't, you're going to jail. Nobody's saying that. Nobody wants that. If they do, they're wrong. We want a pluralistic society where people have freedom and they have choice, and they can decide different things for themselves, and freedom of religion and freedom of speech. I believe the American experiment is the ideal society here on earth until the Lord comes. I think we have the best system of government that's ever happened. But it's in jeopardy right now, and we're seeing this kind of Marxist, incursion on our government that's taking place. And I think that it's so important that we recognize that these principles of our constitutional framework, which are really based upon principles of freedom within a Judeo-Christian worldview, that these things are in fact the best for a healthy and free society.
Yeah, again, well said. You hit on this, though, that we are definitely drifting in an area where we aren't upholding laws. And again, if we're being told as Christians that, hey, you can't legislate morality, I think we're starting to see it in the numbers of people drinking that Kool-Aid, proverbially. The latest Barna research that we saw a couple weeks ago, that about 50% of people of faith are planning on not voting this cycle. I reached out to Mark Mitchell with Rasmussen, and I said, do you have any numbers on this? And he said, I hope this is inflated. Doesn't have any hard numbers on it. So I think we have to take it as it is, with the Barna research, that 50% of Christians are not going to vote. And I have to think that part of that is they've bought into the notion it doesn't really matter with what we're doing. It doesn't really matter. Who am I to say we believe this, but who am I to say to legislate my morality on someone else, which is actually a very postmodern way of thinking.
Yeah. I think that another one of the things that people are running into is this idea of they're looking at the candidates that are on the ballot and they just don't like either one of them.
I was going to bring that up. They're like, well, I don't have a solution with the candidate. So how would you answer that? Again.
So, I was actually talking to Rick Green here recently, who's just brilliant guy. I mean, I feel like he's got the entire Constitution memorized. I mean, he just is a walking dictionary of this stuff. But, one of the things that we were discussing was this idea that as long as Jesus is not on the ballot, we are always going to vote between the lesser of two evils. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. It could be you and I on the ballot. I think that there's still people are voting for the lesser of two evils. It doesn't matter how good of a guy you are. You could be a great pastor and it's still not as good as the standard of Christ. We're still fallen people in that way. And so, what we are constantly doing as individuals is we are looking to really cast our vote to what I would call to invest that talent, in this case, to put that into some sort of soil that we believe is going to bring about the best return. So right now, if you look at if we're talking about investing money, you might invest in the stock market, you might invest in real estate, you might invest in some other, maybe new startup company. But, those, we could debate which one of those is going to be best for your finances and bring about the best return. But what's not going to be the best? taking it to the casino, right? Taking it to, some other sort of debaucherous location. Like that's not going to, or just taking it to, the river and tossing it in or something like that. That's not going to bring about the return that you're wanting. You're going to lose that. You're going to squander it. It's going to be, at best, it's going to, be just like, buried in the sand that you pull it out later. But when we're talking about really casting a vote, kind of coming back to that parable of the talents, we are looking for in really trying to discern who is the best soil from the top of the ballot to the bottom of the ballot that I can invest my vote in to bring about the best return for my school board, for my local city governance, for my state governance, for the federal governance, and where can I put that vote in order to see that? And I think right now this is not about Democrat versus Republican. It's not even really about left or right anymore in the sense of what we typically see. This is about kind of a Marxist takeover of this nation, or people who are going to still believe and stand on the constitutional values we have, of liberty and freedom of speech and freedom of religion, et cetera. And I think that the choice is clearer than ever, in that sense. And I would say that goes from the top out to the bottom. That's not just about two candidates running for president. That's about throughout. I think that you can go to every single, spot within your ballot and go, who's standing for liberty and freedom of speech and freedom of press. And I think it's interesting, the way in which we're seeing, I think, people rally around these ideas of freedom who are ideologically so opposed to each other.
Oh my goodness.
I would say
the tents of both sides are just mind numbing.
Yes, there's
to see who's in what tent when who's in another tent this election.
Yes. So, I think that people have to discern that. They have to look at that, and they really have to say, like, where is my vote going to bring about the best return for this nation?
But I mentioned it's mind numbing, but in some ways, though, there's some encouragement going here because I believe people are actually looking at the worldview. They're looking at the ideology and saying, okay, who is going to represent this best?
Yeah.
All right. Let's speak to the church on this one. What happens? What's at stake with this election? We always hear this is the most consequential election that you'll ever face. I've been hearing that since the year 2000. I can remember anyway. And I'm sure it went on in the days of Reagan. But why I hear many people say, no, 2024 is the most consequential election. Is that true? And if so, what's at stake?
Yeah, no, great question. And so first of all, let's say what this is not, right? So government is not the vehicle that God uses to advance his kingdom most of the time. Right. Now, we see examples of that throughout history, and we want to be the type of place to where, we can see godliness and, even just past presidents in this nation who have called for the nation to pray or who have honored God. I mean, all of our founding documents, the number of times that the Bible is the most quoted resource, that was quoted by early founders, in these documents that we have. And so, for sure, government can glorify and advance the gospel and Christianity, but the primary means in which the gospel is advanced is through the church. Now, the reason why I think our vote is so important, the reason why government is so important, politics is so important, is because it really sets the stage for what liberties and freedoms, among other things, what liberties and freedoms the church actually has to move and to operate. We are seeing places, even in a place like England, and we see this a little bit in Canada right now, where you have pastors that are arrested, you have people are arrested for things they post on social media because it goes against,
I don't think a lot of people in America know that's happening. They see it here and there, but it's a real thing.
Everybody's social feed's different. So you're looking at your phone and you're scrolling through, and somebody's just getting sports, somebody else is getting politics.
The algorithm.
When you really start diving into this, I know people that have been affected by this. Even people here in the U.S., like during COVID, that were, they were fined because their church was still meeting. Right. And one of the things I pull out of my book, Woke Jesus, is this idea of sphere sovereignty, that we have different spheres of operation, within the system that God has created, that he's made, rulers and kings and presidents. He's given them authority over the nation. He's given elders and pastors authority over the church. He's given, fathers and mothers authority over the home. He's given each of us individual sphere of sovereignty or authority over our physical bodies. And so, we each have these different realms. If you have a father who's in charge of the home, he has authority over the home. Well, the only time that is removed is if he begins to violate the individual authority over one of his children or over his spouse's body through the form of abuse, right? And then the state comes in and said, no, you went past your sphere of sovereignty. You started violating that. You harmed somebody in a negative way. But for the state to come in when there is no abuse and try to take his kids away from him, as we've seen in multiple situations with, some of the gender ideology and things like that, that moves that the state is operating outside.
That's happening too in the United States. I think people are aware of that.
It's happened in my state, in Indiana. We're a triple majority red state, and we have examples of that. I think that's gone all the way to the Supreme Court now. And so this is happening right here on our soil in the U.S. When the state comes into the church and says, you guys can't meet. It's not the state's job to tell the church whether they can meet or not. It's the elder's job. The state, we can say it this way, they don't have the state's jurisdiction stops at the entrance to the church, in the same way that the church's jurisdiction stops at the entrance to the person's individual house. At that point, the father's jurisdiction, kicks in. And so we have these realms, these sphere of authority that we have. Most of what we're seeing happen today on the negative side is because those spheres of authority are getting confused or violated. And one, either the state or federal government or something is coming in and usurping authority in a realm that they should not actually have authority in, and it's pushing against that. On the positive side, look at TPUSA Faith. We have touch points with over 3,000 churches and growing. We're getting ready to do a pastors conference down in Georgia. We'll have over 500 pastors there. We're doing a national day of prayer and fasting on November 3rd. We'd love to have you guys join with us. It sounds like through the series you already are in line. We're calling churches, especially the Sunday before the election, to do some sort of kingdom value message in the ballot box and really helping their people think biblically about their vote. And then on the November 4th, the day before the election, we're doing a 12-hour live stream of programming from 8 a.m. Mountain Time to 8 p.m. Mountain Time of some of our nation's top faith leaders offering prayers for the nation. It's free. Everybody can tune in and join with us in that. And so we're expecting over 1,000 churches to participate, in that right now. So there's some incredible things that are taking place. I'm encouraged. I'm an optimist. God wins in the end, but that doesn't mean that the church in America always thrives. We have to do our part to push back tyranny, to see these freedoms continue, and to make sure that we don't lose these constitutional values and rights that we have. But honestly, regardless of what the state does, our rights and our Constitution is clear on this. Our rights are given to us and come to us from God. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't matter what man can do. The worst they can do is kill us. And you know what, as a believer, that ain't so bad. And we have a lot of Christians who've gone before us who have faced a lot worse things than we're facing right now. But if we don't want to fall into the same, despair that they faced at times and terror that they faced at times from the early church, we need to do the things that we need to do today. And that is to use our voice and use our vote in order to bring about a difference.
We even hear this from our mission partners across the world. They look to us in America. They said, if so goes America, so goes we. When it comes to the funding, when it comes to sending missionaries throughout the world. So there is a bright, shining light that we as the church need to really protect as a bastion of truth and faith. Last word. What would you encourage? We're in Southeast Wisconsin. Southeast Wisconsin could decide this whole thing. All right. So what would you encourage to the person that is still unsure? Maybe I'll get to it. Speak to that person.
Yeah. So my kind of tongue-in-cheek joke here is that you have to vote early and vote often, right? And but not vote often in the way of cheating. We're voting often by talking to the people around us and encouraging them to vote. What's better than you showing up and giving your one vote, bringing 10 of your friends with you and talking to them about these things, sharing messages like this with them, bringing them to church to hear these things leading up to the election, and really encouraging them. And so we want to see a multiplication factor where we are really being, ambassadors for freedom and liberty, in this nation. And really these Christian ideas just continue to have an impact and have room in our society for them. And so I think that, it is vote early, and then get as many people as you can to come with you, to encourage them to vote, to impact and influence. Everybody has a sphere of influence. You don't have to be, some sort of national faith leader or national political leader to have influence. The average Facebook post is seen by over 200 people. So you might not have a whole lot of friends on Facebook, but if you make a post and say, hey, I want to encourage people to vote, do this and that, share these things, take some of these arguments to be able to kind of defend your position and get that out there. Do it in love, but stand on the truth. And I think that, we have to do everything we can in making this and really, seeing this, because to answer your question earlier, I do believe this is the most important election that we've ever seen. There's more at stake than ever before. This is not just a simple, us versus them sort of moment right here. This is a turning point in our nation. And I think it's more important than ever what we're doing.
Yep, it's going to go one way or the other. And so I think it's important that as Christians, we have the opportunity, this unique part of history, unique part of what we call the United States, that we, unlike many other eras of the world and time periods, where we have a say, at least in part, of what happens with our future. And so it's a very important task. And thank you, Lucas, so much for really just unpacking even the sphere of influence that we have, whether it be government, whether it be our church, whether it be our family, or other areas, and how those really interact with one another. So powerful. And I believe that we were blessed today and encouraged and motivated to get out and let our voice be heard. As we as Christians, we need to be an influence. We can't control people, as you said, we can't control people's hearts, but we can be an influence, and we should be an influence. And it really grieves me, whether it's this issue or any other issues for that matter, where we are just on the sidelines and like, I can't. Barna said the reason why people won't get involved is they don't want to be controversial. And the thing is, we don't have to be a jerk about it, but we do need to enter the realm of influence. Lucas, thank you so much just for your time today. Again, clarity, powerful. I believe people know their next point of action to let their voice be heard and vote. How can they connect with you? How can they learn more about what you do?
Absolutely. So on a personal level, I'm pretty easy to find on social media, typically either at Mr. Mr. Lucas Miles or at Lucas Miles, depending on the platform. I do regular videos on Instagram and TikTok, post, Facebook, etc. Not quite as active on Twitter, but still there. My personal website is lucasmiles.org. They can also, I want to encourage them to head over to TPUSAfaith.com. So you can find out a lot more about us there at TPUSAfaith.com. Also, if they want to pick up a copy of my book, Woke Jesus, The False Messiah Destroying Christianity. This is really, I wrote it to be the definitive guide on understanding wokeism, the history of wokeism, how it's affected the church, and ultimately what we can do about it. There's a lot there. I've got other books like The Christian Left and other things as well to check out, but it's all there at lucasmiles.org.
Wonderful. Well, I encourage everybody to connect further. And thank you again so much for your time, Lucas.
Thank you.